welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is McDonald, and today in this video I'll be showing you how you can use geometry nodes to make this kind of image. It's something based off an image that I made a while back, but it's like a clump of icospheres or spheres with a material inside what seems to be something similar to an atom or so. In this video, I'll show you how you can make that using geometry nodes in Blender 2.92. So this is a new project, and first of all, we're going to delete the sphere, the cube, the camera, well, everything. So first of all, we need to delete everything. We need to add a new sphere, a new icosphere. We need to delete the cube, camera, and the stuff. We need to add a new icosphere, and then the icosphere we can leave it as whatever subdivision, but I did around 5 or 4, so using around 5 still won't do such. Well, still won't slow down the computer if you're using a good GPU. So first of all, after I've added the icosphere, what you need to do is to move the icosphere a bit, like around here, and now you need to add a cube. This cube is the cube that will have a geometry node. So if you want to access geometry nodes, you could what's again 3D view, no 3D viewports. What's again timeline, and then you could make a new. I think you could. Oh no. You can make a new viewport here, around here, just like this. And if we go all the way to geometry node editor, you would see the geometry node editor. So how you can make a new geometry node editor is by going to the modifier and going all the way to the modifier and clicking on geometry nodes. As you can see, we now have our own very own geometry nodes. Now my mouse scroll isn't working, so I can't really zoom in unless I click here. So after we have created the new geometry nodes, the first we need to do is, like, geometry nodes was a new feature in Blender 2.9, I think. It has been released in Blender 3, but in Blender 2.92, to create the random thing that I did with the icospheres inside the atom that I showed, you first press Shift plus A and then you search on point instance. So you can search your point distribute or point instance, it doesn't matter. But first of all, you can do point distributes if you want. So point distributes the points. It doesn't really render it unless you get a point instance. But as you can see, it has distributed the points all the way, even though it's not really good meshes. So if I zoom in again, zoom in. As you can see, we have properties. First one is the random. You can select between random and poison disk. I don't know if there's really that much of a difference though. But in using random, you could select the density of it. And before we edit it anymore, we should add. You can add a point instance, which allows you to instantiate a mesh for the point distribute. So put it afterwards and you can select the object you want. So I'm going to select the icosphere, and as you can see, we now have the icosphere. So you can reduce the density if you want less icospheres, and also if you can scale the object itself. To reduce the size of the icosphere, you can go all the way to point scale. you can go to using point scale, and point scale allows you to scale the uh, the the points. However, so I can do it by 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.0, whichever one, however one you would like to do. It doesn't really matter. So 0.5. So it's 0.5, and then you can select the icon sphere. You can also instantiate collections if you want. So if I increase the density, as you can see, it's a little more clumped. So I'm going to clump it a little. And now after doing that, that's all we need for now for the geometry node parts of the image. There's so much more you can do with the geometry nodes, but after adding all the points, you could add the circle as used for the 3 rings. So first circle, you could use the torus mesh or the Bezier curve circle. It doesn't need a geometry node. So if you go all the way here, if you're adding a curve, you could scroll down, you could click this button here, and you could scroll down all the way to geometry, and you could edit the depth. So you can edit the depth however you want, and you can also scale it up. So if I scale it up like that and reduce the depth, as you can see, we now have our first ring. It was quite small, so I'm going to increase the size. Yeah, like that. And decrease the depth. So how we actually did the 3 rings and the sphere in the one of the rings is that I duplicated the icosphere, or I made a new icosphere, and you can duplicate by pressing Shift plus D, but after that I now constrained it to the first ring. The first ring is the one with the sphere, so I constrained it to the first ring. So add object constraint, and how to constrain it is by adding the add constraints limit distance. I think that's what I did. So if you select the Bezier circle, so how I did it is through limit distance constraints, and I selected the Bezier curve as the target, and I put the sphere on the curve to limit the distance. So you can put it anyhow. And first of all, if you want, you can put these spheres inside these 3, inside the other rings to make an atom, the electrons. And you can also scale down this stuff. So if I duplicate the rings, I press Shift plus D, and I rotate it by the X or Y axis, whichever. And I press Shift plus D again, and I rotate it on the Z by 180 degrees. And you could add, if you want, you can add the spheres. And so after adding the 3 rings, we now are going to add the materials. So for the materials, how you get the Fresnel, how you get that Fresnel black material is through the shading. So I was using cycles, and I'm going to use cycles, and I'm going to go all the way to the rendered view. I'm going to edit the material. So how you edit the material and it will show the geometry nodes is you edit the object that you're instancing. So if you add a new material and you edit it anyhow, let's say adding a Fresnel stuff, and then the Fresnel, and then adding a mix shader. Adding a mix shader and putting it here. and adding an emission shader. Oh, and adding an emission shader. So the emission shader will be the second shader. And so as you can see, it's already editing the instances in the geometry nodes. So after you have put the Fresnel and the emission, you can add a color ramp to clamp the. You can add a color ramp to create a sharp Fresnel. So if you put it on constant and you move the Y all the way, yeah, if you move the Y all the way, and now you can see the Fresnel. So you can edit the Fresnel, however, well, you can edit the emission because it's the emission we're using for the Fresnel, and you can edit it to be blue, red, however you want. So maybe that, and I set the emission strength to 8 or whichever one. So the emission strength is 8. For each ring, you could edit one ring and link the material to the others. So if I delete the principal BSDF as I add the material to one ring, and I add an emission node, and I use it, and I plug it all the way. I plug it all the way to the surface. Now you can see it's emitting. If I set it to 10 or 8 or whichever one, and I put the color to around a bluish, and then I now like to link a material. You select the object with the material, and then you highlight the others. Well, I think you highlight the others first, then you select the material. The last one. You press Ctrl plus L and you can link materials. So as you can see, we just linked it. This material can have the same material as the others, though it's going to be a duplicate because we want it to have a different color. So it's going to be a duplicate, and the color we're using is green or so. So you could also change the body. You could also change the body to black if you want. So black for both of the materials, and we could also set the world color black as well. So now that we're done with the actual ring and stuff, we're now going to add a background. So the first step to the background is to add a volume. So we go to G, constraint. If you add a new cube, press G and press X to constrain to the x-axis, and scale it on the press Shift plus X to constrain it to the Z and Y axis, and scale it, and also scale it on the Y axis, and then scale it on the X axis. And then using this shader node, you can now add a new material, and this material is going to be a volume. So you can press Shift plus A principled and search on, well, click search and search on principled volume. So if you press G, I might move it. Uh, I might move the cube back. So move it a little back. So how we do it is by pressing Shift plus A and adding principled volume. So principled volume. And through this it will become a volume. So you plug it like this. Volume. And now it's a volume. You could edit the density, however. And now it's a full volume. So to instance the particles or the rings for the background, you could add a plane. And in the plane, well, before we add the plane, we might want to add the light first. So we might add an area light, and I move it to the side. Layout, because it's not rendering. So Blender's not responding. Blender's not responding. So now we're in the layout view, and if we move the light all the way to the back, a little forward, a little back, and you have to rotate it 90 degrees. Oh, you have to make it face the cube, the volume, and press that, and you scale it up. You move it closer to the volume. And for the lighting, you can set it to any color, but we have to increase the lighting to maybe to at least 600 to 1000. Or maybe a little more, so maybe around 2000. Maybe around 2000, move it to there, and edit the color. So make it green however you want, and you can move it and place it at the other side. You can make it blue. You can scale the luminosity if it's not enough. So, I press Shift plus Z, I moved it to layout. So, before adding after adding the lights, you could add to summon the particles. We add a plane and we move it all the way to the back, or we move it all the way to the back. You move it down. You can move it down anyhow. And you have to scale it. So after scaling it, all the way, you go all the way to the particles panel, which is this thing, and you add a new particle. So before we add anything, we have to dumb down the number of particles because it can become quite in number of particles we render. So at default it's Halo, but we have to change it all the way to collection. So how you actually particularize a collection, which is this thing that we made, is by moving the objects, which should be this, 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 and this. Move them all the way. Press M to move the collection, and you can make a new collection. And that collection, you can name it. Uh, you can name it with whatever we want. Atom, object, uh, whichever. Sorry. So after I've done that, you can click the plane again and scroll the way down to render. And the instance collection that you select should be the new collection that you made. So we need a timeline to actually animate this. So I'm going all the way to this way. A timeline graph for this and the animation. That is different, but still. So after getting the timeline, you can now play it, and as you can see, the particles are going to be moving, but they're going to be moving down. Yeah, they're going to be moving down. So to make them move up, like in the picture that we saw in the previous Blender file, we scroll all the way to field weights, and you have to edit the gravity field weight, and you have to put in gravity field weights for it to move up, and before that you move it all the way to the beginning, and now as you can see it will move up. To increase the size of the instance, you select whole collection, and you also scale it up. You can scale it up to point or to the one itself. You know, one is quite huge, so maybe 0.5. And if you want to rotate it, you could click rotations, go to rotation. You could randomize it. You could select the phase. You could also randomize the phase, which is the rotation that they have. And so if you animate it, the particles are going up, as you can see. So we have to edit it, and we have to view all the way to the X. And now we're going to add the camera. So the camera is going to be here. And if you press Control Alt 0 what's it again? On Windows, you will be able to set the camera however you want. So if I go to if I go to scroll all the way here, it's quite huge. My mouse was not working. There, everyone, my mouse is not working. It's hard. X here, and move it down all the way. So you press Control Alt 0 to set it to where you're viewing in the viewport. And if you move it all the way to the side, if you move the camera to the side, oh no. If I move the camera here, and if I move it forward a little, it is quite very noisy. If I move it up a little, If I scale this, up, I can't really even see my mouse. When I go to solid view and move it and scale it up all the way. So if I go back to rendered, I can denoise it by going here and under denoise. Like I can denoise it by clicking on the render properties and clicking denoise, clicking viewport. As you can see, before we view the viewport, as you can see the icosphere is there. I think it was that if we move the icosphere, everything else will move. So if we move the icosphere away from the camera, you can see it properly. And we also still have to reduce the number of particles. So I'm going to go all the way to the beginning. I'm going to view it, and why am I playing backwards? I'm going to view it. I'm going to stop it around where it's decent. So around here, as you can see. So I'm going to go to the rendered view, and this time I'm going to denoise it to see what it will do. So because we're going to denoise it and glare it with the final image, obviously. So I'm going to see how it looks denoised. As you can see, it looks quite. And also, if you want, before we render it, you could add all the effects. You could add the passport to view it as if it was being rendered. So if you go to camera, go to the camera icon. If you go to the viewport display, under the viewport display there'll be something called passport, and if you scroll it, it's the opacity from the camera's view when you select the camera. So now it will look as if this is the render itself. And also, if you scroll down, you click depth of field, you can focus on the object. That should be this object, I think cube is that object. And let me see, and it is cube is that object. So if we now actually go all the way here, and if we turn it to 0.1 or 0.1, I can see everything would be it. It should be blurred. So I moved the camera a little back, but at most we're done. We're most likely done with the features, the geometry nodes, the particle, the emission, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this channel, please subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. So have a great day, and please suggest any improvements I can make to any geometry nodes thing. I haven't really tried it out, but it's very useful. And have a great day. Bye.